Xenopsychology Academy of Runkal was not a place for the faint-hearted. Its students hailed from 42 sapient species, each gifted in telepathy, empathy, or some form of psychic resonance. They gathered here, on the cold moon of Velion-Wape, to master the mind sciences, the study of fear, emotion, and mental projection. Humans, however, were not supposed to be there. Not because they lacked intelligence, humans were endlessly creative, but because they were psychically inert. Their species had no measurable telepathic capacity, no aura spectrum, and no resonance signature. To the psychic galaxy, they were considered empty vessels, so when Corporal Eli Vance, a Terran Marine turned exchange student, walked through the obsidian gates of the academy, the entire class of alien adepts turned to stare. He was tall for a human, with short brown hair and the kind of quiet confidence that made even the multi-eyed predators pause. He didn't wear a mind-link circlet or aura shield, just standard-issue human fatigues and a silver dog tag that caught the light like a silent challenge. Professor Hral, a scaled being from the Zeth species, rasped as he introduced him. "Students, this is human. It volunteered to participate in our empathic fear resonance course. You will treat it with scientific respect." A ripple of hisses and mind chatter passed through the lecture chamber. "Why would a null mind attend our course?" sneered a tall crystalline student named Corell. "He cannot feel resonance," Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe not the way you do. But fear's a universal language, right?" Some laughed telepathically, others frowned. Humans to them were biological curiosities, fragile, irrational creatures from a backwater world. They didn't know that fear was something humans had learned to live with since the dawn of fire. The fear chamber, the YC. Following week marked the class's most difficult trial, the fear projection examination. Each student would enter the chamber of reflection, a vast telepathic simulation that materialized one's deepest terrors into physical sensory form. The goal was not to destroy the fear, but to control it, to show dominance over their own psyche. The chamber's design was ancient, built by the Velthari, a long-extinct race that had used it to train their seers. It was said that once unleashed, the fear beast could sense weakness, and that few ever left the room unchanged. One by one, the alien students faced their inner demons. Corell, the crystalline empath, faced the sound of shattering glass, his body fracturing endlessly in a loop. Hral, the Zeth instructor, faced the sight of his homeworld burning, his hatchlings turning to ash. Each emerged trembling, some scarred, some enlightened. Then came Eli's turn. The telepathic amplifiers dimmed as the human stepped into the circular platform. The walls shimmered, forming mirrors of thought and color. The students leaned forward, eager to see what a null-minded species could possibly fear. The room remained still for a long, silent minute. Then the walls pulsed black. The psychic sensors screamed. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped 10 degrees as something massive began to form from the center. Something that made even the empathic aliens recoil. A creature emerged, wreathed in smoke and shifting bone. Its shape was amorphous, changing every second. A wolf, then a serpent, then something indescribable. It towered over Eli, eyes like voids, breath like acid. The air reeked of old death and nightmares. Professor Hral shouted, "Contain it! Containment protocols!" But the fear beast didn't attack. It stopped. It lowered its monstrous head, nostrils flaring as if confused. It sniffed the human, then curled its titanic body around him, like a beast finding warmth beside a campfire, and lay still. Gasps filled the observation chamber. The psychic readings were off the charts. Every monitor blinked red. The fear beast had achieved full physical manifestation, but was showing no aggression. Instead, it slept, purring like thunder. Eli just stood there, expression unreadable. Guess it's not so scary when you stop running. The class was silent. 3. Aftermath. When Eli left the chamber, the other students didn't speak to him for hours. Not out of contempt, but because they didn't understand what they'd seen. In the cafeteria, whispers filled the air. How did he survive it? It obeyed him. No, it loved him. Professor Hral summoned him to his office. The fear beast, Hral hissed, pacing back and forth, is not supposed to be tamed. It feeds on raw emotional data. on terror. Your species shouldn't even be readable to it. Eli shrugged. Maybe it didn't read me. Explain. It recognized me. The professor's frills stiffened. As what? Eli smiled faintly. As someone who's met it before. 4. The nature of human fear. That night, while the aliens meditated or shared dream links, Eli sat by the Academy's glass wall, staring at the binary stars beyond. He wasn't sure if he'd passed the test, but he knew one thing. The fear beast had felt familiar. Back on Earth, fear was a constant companion. Humans had learned to fear the dark, the unknown, the deep ocean, disease, betrayal, and war. But they didn't run forever. They built fires, wrote stories, and found laughter in the middle of horror. They made peace with fear. Aliens studied fear as a pathology. Humans treated it like an old friend. V. The panic 3 nights later. The alarms blared across the Academy. A telepathic rupture was detected. Something massive, uncontrolled, tearing through the dream fields of students. The fear beast had escaped the chamber. It was free. The corridors filled with screams and psychic static. Holodoors sealed. The air shimmered with energy as the creature's roar rolled through the walls. It wasn't just feeding on fear now. It was multiplying it. The empathic students fell to their knees, paralyzed by their own nightmares made flesh. Professor Hral and his assistants tried to contain it with mental barriers, but their efforts dissolved under the sheer psychic pressure. The beast moved like smoke, slipping between thoughts, consuming terror, and yet, it avoided one section of the Academy entirely. Eli's dormitory. When the guards found him, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor, unarmed, staring into the darkness. "You're not going to stop it?" one guard demanded telepathically. Eli shook his head. "No, you can't kill fear. You can only listen to it." Before they could stop him, he walked straight toward the oncoming darkness. The human and the beast. The fear beast roared through the grand atrium, shattering telepathic wards like glass. Its body filled the space, shadow and fang, eye and void. Every step it took left psychic cracks in the floor. And yet, when Eli stepped into view, it froze again. "Hey," he said softly, his voice steady. "You're scaring them." The beast trembled, its shifting face showing hundreds of terrified expressions. Every emotion it had absorbed from the students. "They fear what they don't understand," Eli continued. "You don't need to feed on that. You just need to be seen." The creature's massive head lowered again, just like in the chamber. But this time its eyes, those bottomless voids, held something almost childlike. "They made you to teach them control," Eli said. "But they forgot what fear's for. It's not an enemy. It's a teacher." He reached out and touched the beast's snout. The telepathic storm subsided. The air cleared. Across the Academy, psychic readings dropped to normal levels, and as everyone watched, the creature, the amalgamation of every terror ever imagined, curled beside the human once more. Its vast body settled like a sleeping mountain. Its breathing slowed, then it slept. Professor Hral arrived moments later, stunned. "You calmed it?" Eli smiled faintly. "No, I reminded it that fear doesn't have to win." 7. Lessons of the mind. The next day, the Academy reopened under strict supervision. But things were different. Students who once laughed at the human now watched him with quiet reverence. They studied his neural patterns, his emotional responses, his physiology, but none of it explained how he'd done it. During the following lecture, Hral addressed the class. "Yesterday," he began, "we learned something extraordinary. For eons, our species have tried to eradicate fear, to silence it. But this human has shown us another way." He gestured toward Eli, who sat modestly in the back. "For them, fear is not failure. It is survival. It is what makes them innovate, endure, and adapt. They do not conquer fear, they befriend it." The alien students nodded silently. Even Curel, the arrogant crystalline empath, lowered his head in respect. 8. The experiment weeks passed. The fear beast remained dormant, curled up in the chamber like a sleeping guardian. Scientists attempted to approach it, but it only stirred when Eli was nearby. Finally, the Academy proposed an experiment. "What happens?" Professor Hral asked. "If we project a collective fear, all our anxieties, all our darkness, into the chamber and let the human interact with it again. It was risky, but Eli agreed. The chamber lit once more, brighter than before. Dozens of psychic minds linked together, forming a storm of pure emotional data. Fear took shape, not as one monster, but thousands of them. Shadows, beasts, memories, storms. Eli stood in the middle, breathing calmly. He didn't fight them. He simply walked among them, touching them, naming them, smiling. "You're the fear of failure," he said to one phantom. "You're the fear of loss," he said to another. "You're the fear of not being enough." Each time he spoke, the monsters shrank, softened, then dissolved into light. At last, the storm faded, leaving only a faint echo of peace. Professor Raoul whispered almost reverently, "Humans, make peace with the dark." Eli looked at him. "That's how we survived, long before we reached the stars." The graduation, months later, the Academy held its annual commencement ceremony. The graduating students stood beneath the twin suns, their psychic auras glimmering like fireflies. When Eli's name was called, the entire crowd rose, not in mockery this time, but in respect. Raoul handed him a silver insignia. "For teaching us what no telepath ever could. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to walk with it." Eli smiled. "You're welcome, just don't summon any more nightmare beasts." The audience laughed, a sound that echoed across the moon's thin air. X. Epilogue. The guardian of dreams long after Eli returned to Earth. The fear beast remained beneath the Academy. Students visited it in meditation, learning from it, not fighting it. They called it the guardian of dreams, and sometimes, when the moons were low and the stars aligned, the creature would lift its head and look toward the stars, toward a small blue planet far away, as if waiting for the return of the only creature it never feared, because somewhere in its vast, ancient heart, it remembered the human who sat beside it without trembling. And that night, for the first time in its existence, the fear beast dreamed. Deep beneath the Xenopsychology Academy of Runkal, the fear beast slept. It had been 2 cycles since the human Eli Vance left the moon, yet the chamber still thrummed with his faint emotional imprint, warmth where there had once been only terror. The creature stirred sometimes, its vast body twitching like it was dreaming. When students approached, it would open a single massive eye, but not in hostility. It simply watched. They had begun calling it Kural, an ancient Velthari word meaning reflection. The Academy had changed since Eli's visit. Entire courses were now dedicated to human cognitive models of emotion. Alien students quoted human philosophers, watched Terran documentaries, and even tried primitive Earth meditation rituals. But something strange was happening across the psychic network. Empaths began reporting strange dreams, visions of a dark horizon, and of Kural calling across the void. Some awoke screaming, others awoke crying, and all of them dreamed of a human voice, whispering, "It's coming." 2. The shadow in the mind stream Professor Raoul was among the first to notice it. While reviewing empathic transmissions from the Andari cluster, he detected a pattern, a rising pulse of collective dread. Not directed at any one event, but spreading like a virus. It infected dreams, psychic transmissions, and even the AI consciousnesses that monitored deep space frequencies. The galactic net called it the echo of fear. At first, it was subtle, a nightmare here, a hallucination there. But within weeks, entire telepathic communities began collapsing into panic. Civilizations that prided themselves on mental discipline found their populations paralyzed by visions of death and cosmic annihilation. Then came the whispers of something older than the Velthari, older than the Academy itself. A predator born from thought, a being that fed not on flesh, but on terror itself. Raoul's scales paled as he studied the telemetry. Kural was stirring in its containment chamber. Threed, recall the human. We must bring back the Terran. That was Raoul's first order when the Academy Council convened. The room erupted in disbelief. "You would summon a null mind?" hissed one elder. "What can a human do against a psychic plague?" Raoul's eyes narrowed. He calmed the first beast when no telepath could. If the echo is a reflection of our collective fear, then perhaps the only species immune to resonance can confront it. The council hesitated. Then, reluctantly, they agreed. A transmission was sent across the light years to Earth, to a quiet outpost in the Sierra Nevada mountains, where Eli Vance served as an instructor for the Terran Diplomatic Corps. When he received the message, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he simply said, I told you. Fear doesn't die. It learns. 4. Return to the moon. When Eli arrived on Velion 4, the Academy was almost unrecognizable. Security drones patrolled the halls. Psychic shields shimmered like blue veils over every doorway. Students wore dampening headbands to block intrusive dreams. And deep beneath it all, Kural lay restless, its body twitching, its eyes flickering with shadows not its own. When Eli entered the containment hall, the creature lifted its head and let out a deep, rumbling exhale. The sound made the walls vibrate. The air shimmered with emotion so dense it felt physical. Eli approached slowly, whispering, "Hey, old friend." The beast's enormous eye blinked once. Then a ripple of dark mist poured from its body, forming vague humanoid shapes, faces screaming, crying, pleading. "They're coming from beyond thought," said Professor Harral, standing behind Eli. "It's not just psychic energy anymore. It's infection." Eli frowned. "Then it's not fear we're dealing with. It's what happens when fear loses its purpose." The echo revealed. The following week, chaos reached the Academy. The echo finally manifested, first as static on the telepathic channels, then as a presence felt by every sensitive mind. It wasn't a creature. It was a field, a web of negative resonance that spread faster than light. Feeding on emotional connection, the more telepaths fought it, the stronger it grew. It whispered to them, taking the voice of their loved ones, their teachers, their gods. And then it began to feed on Kural itself. The fear beast roared, shaking the entire moon. Its once calm form began to twist and unravel, merging with the psychic shadow invading it. Half its body turned black, the other half glowed faintly with light. Eli realized with horror what was happening. It's merging with their fear. It's becoming all of it. The alien students screamed as their nightmares began bleeding into reality. Giant forms of light and darkness battling across the chamber's psychic veil. And then, through the chaos, Eli heard the voice again, the same one that had haunted the dreams of thousands. "You made peace with me once, human, but can you make peace with all of them?" Into the mindstorm. Eli did the only thing he could. He stepped into the storm. Ral shouted after him, "You'll be destroyed!" But the human didn't stop. He entered the containment field barefoot, eyes closed, breathing steadily. At once, the echo flooded him. Every fear, every nightmare, every scream across the galaxy condensed into one unbearable torrent. His mind filled with visions of burning worlds, drowning cities, dying faces. He felt the pain of 1,000 species at once, and through it all, he saw Kural, writhing in agony, trying to protect him, failing. Eli fell to his knees. For the first time in years, he was afraid. And then he remembered what he told the class long ago. Fear's not an enemy. It's a teacher. He reached out, not with telepathy, not with power, but with something uniquely human. Empathy through memory. He remembered his mother's voice telling him stories during storms. He remembered laughing with his unit after a hopeless battle. He remembered crying at the graves of his friends and standing up anyway, and he whispered into the darkness, "It's okay to be scared. It means you're still alive." Sefari. The turning point, the psychic storm slowed. The echo faltered as if confused. Eli stood, his voice steady despite the blood dripping from his nose. "You've been alone for too long," he said softly. "But fear isn't supposed to exist alone. It's supposed to warn, to guide, to protect." He placed his hand on Kural's darkened chest. "Come back." The fear beast shuddered. Light spread through its body like dawn, breaking through storm clouds. The black corruption melted away, replaced by soft golden glow. The echo screamed, not in rage, but in sorrow, as it fragmented. The sound wasn't destructive, it was release. Across the galaxy, billions of beings woke from nightmares. The psychic network went silent. And then, peace. Eli fell unconscious. 8. The silence. After, he awoke days later in the infirmary. Professor Harral sat beside him, his scales dull with exhaustion. "You did it," he rasped. The echo is gone. The dream fields are calm again. Eli smiled weakly. It wasn't me. It was them, all of you. You stopped running. Frau lowered his gaze. Kural has changed. It no longer feeds on fear. It absorbs it, transforms it into calm. It is guardian now, truly. Eli sat up slowly. Good. That's what fear should do. Warn, not consume. The professor looked at him long, as though memorizing the shape of his mind. You humans, you are terrifying. You wield no telepathy, yet you master the one emotion that defines every intelligent life form. Eli chuckled. We had a head start. Our whole history's built on surviving our own imagination. 9. The last lesson before leaving the academy again, Eli visited Kural one final time. The massive creature lay coiled in a pool of soft light. When it saw him, it lowered its head, releasing a low, rumbling sound like a heartbeat. Eli placed a hand on its hide. You did good, big guy. For a moment, the beast's mind brushed his, just a faint impression like warmth on skin. A whisper formed in his thoughts, simple and ancient. Thank you, human. I am not fear anymore. I am remembrance. Eli smiled. That's all any of us are in the end. He turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. Kral, he said quietly, keep teaching them that lesson. Tell them fear isn't weakness, it's proof we care. The professor nodded solemnly. And if we ever forget? Eli grinned. Then I'll come back and remind you, X. The human legacy centuries later, long after the Academy became the interstellar capital of the Empathic Union, a small statue stood in its Hall of Origins, a bronze figure of a human, hand outstretched toward a sleeping beast. Below it, an inscription in every known language read, He taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the understanding of it. And every year, during the Festival of Reflection, students of every race and species gathered in the great,